He remained standing in the same location. The trip back from my cousin's wedding in northern Michigan was supposed to be easy. 5 hours on the highway, just me and a podcast queue I had been holding on to for weeks. I departed at approximately 9:00 p.m. I wanted to avoid the afternoon traffic, so I went later than I should have on a Saturday in late January. About an hour in, the snow began to fall. Not the picturesque kind, but the fine powder driven by the wind that gives everything the appearance of static. I switched off the podcast. There was something about the quiet that made me feel as though I had to concentrate more than usual. At approximately 10:30, I crossed a flyover on an especially deserted section of I-75. I noticed someone standing up there, merely standing at the railing and gazing down at the road as my headlights passed over it. For a brief moment, I saw them standing motionless, with their hands on the railing and a dark coat. Yes, it was odd, but I convinced myself that it was most likely someone whose car had broken down. Here, cell service was inconsistent. I continued driving. I went over another flyover 20 minutes later. Additionally, there was another person standing there. The same dark coat, the same position, the same strange stillness. My grip on the steering wheel intensified. The flyover vanished into the snow behind me when I looked in my rearview mirror. I told myself that it was probably a different person. There were overpasses on this highway every few miles, but the stance had remained the same. The way the hands were evenly spaced on the railing, and the figure was perfectly centered. To break the silence, I switched on the radio, but most of the channels were static. At last, I discovered a local station that was playing vintage country music, so I left it there. The third flyover arrived 15 minutes later, despite my dislike of country music. Once more, the figure was present. With my heart pounding, I slowed down this time as I got closer. I passed underneath, trying to get a better look, but my headlights only briefly caught their attention. The same position, the same coat, and a hood or shadow covering the face. I couldn't tell if they were staring at the road in general or at me specifically. After that, I accelerated. My logical brain continued to try to make sense of it. They had to be different people. Perhaps there was a protest of some sort. However, who demonstrates on overpasses at 11 p.m. during a snowstorm? In my headlights, I saw the fourth flyover. Before I even got close, I could see the figure. In fact, my foot was just above the brake. My instincts told me to pause, turn around, or go in a different direction. However, there were no ways out, just snow-covered, level, deserted farmland on both sides. And for some reason, it felt worse to stop than to keep going. I glanced up through my windscreen as I went underneath. The person was staring down. The dark outline of a head that was pointed straight at my car was all I could make out. As I came out on the other side, I observed in my rearview mirror. The figure turned slowly, following the motion of my car. I applied more pressure to the accelerator. The speedometer increased to 80 and then 85. The snow was growing heavier, but I did not give a damn. Distance was what I needed. The radio abruptly stopped talking and then started up again. The song sounded off, but it was different now, playing a little too slowly. The singer's voice is deeper than it ought to be. Then, beneath the music, I heard something. A rhythmic sound on hollow metal, similar to breathing or footsteps. I turned off the radio. There was no service on my phone, but that was typical in this area. I made an effort to recall how many miles remained until the next town. 20? 30? It was difficult to see the mile markers through the snow. I became aware that it had been at least 40 minutes since I had seen any other vehicles. Not one, not even in the other direction. Even in a storm on a Saturday night, that didn't seem right. Out of the white, the fifth flyover appeared. The figure was there, but this time they were leaning forward, their hands reaching over the railing, as though they were reaching for the road, where my car would go. As I went under, I held my breath. All I saw was the bridge's fleeting shadow above me, followed by the open sky once more. However, I noticed the figure straighten and turn in my rearview mirror as my exit was about to appear. I had committed the number to memory, exit 167, but the exits I went through were incorrect. 142, followed by 138. The figures were reversing. I stopped on the shoulder. On the frozen ground, my tires crunched. I tried to figure out what was going on as I sat there with the engine running and the wipers squeaking across the windscreen. Had I been turned around in some way? However, I had been driving straight. I hadn't turned, hadn't left. I could see another flyover in the distance, perhaps half a mile ahead, and I could see the shadowy figure standing on it, even from this distance. My petrol gauge was still half full when I looked at it. I examined the odometer. The car was running, but the numbers remained stationary. I noticed the flyover I had just passed when I looked in my rearview mirror. Now it had two figures on it, both staring at me. I shifted the vehicle back into drive. I could hardly hold onto the wheel because my hands were trembling so much. This time I drove more slowly as I got closer to the flyover. The figure became more visible. They had something in their hands, perhaps a cardboard piece or a sign. I tried to read it by squinting. I realized it wasn't a sign as I got closer. It was a picture. A big picture was raised to the road. It wasn't until I was nearly underneath that I could see the image. It was only briefly illuminated by my headlights, but it was sufficient. It was an image of my vehicle. It's my exact car, not a similar one. The model, color, and even the dent in the front bumper from last summer's collision with a pole were all the same. My car was stopped on the side of the road beneath the flyover in the picture, and I saw a figure slumped over the wheel in the driver's seat. I quickly raised my head as I passed beneath, but the flyover was now deserted. Nobody is present. I looked in my rearview mirror. Behind me, nothing but darkness and snow. The radio restarted itself. Despite the static, a calm, clear voice could be heard. Proceed to the next exit. The DJ wasn't the culprit. All that could be heard was a direct, personal voice, speaking as though they were seated in the passenger seat. It repeated, "Take the next exit." I noticed a green sign coming out of the snow up ahead. "Go out of 167. My departure. The one I had been searching for. Just beyond it, though, I could see another flyover. And now there were dozens of figures on that flyover, facing me, standing motionless along the railing. I had to decide. Drive straight ahead or take the exit as instructed by the voice. I have no idea why I made the decisions that I did, perhaps instinctive, or something more profound. I continued straight towards that congested overpass, keeping my foot on the gas as I passed exit 167. The figures all simultaneously raised their right arms and pointed down at the road as I got closer. Everything fell silent as soon as I went under, at the precise location where I would pass. The wind, the engine, even my own breathing, it simply came to an end. After I finished, the road returned to normal and sound rushed back in. In the distance I could make out lights, a petrol station, and a few parked cars. A typical, lovely, everyday civilization. I arrived and sat shakily in the parking lot for 20 minutes. After a while, I went inside, asked the clerk if the highway had been busy tonight, and bought coffee that I didn't drink. "Dead quiet," he remarked. I nodded and made my way back to my car, saying, "Storm's keeping everyone home." I went around to inspect the front bumper before getting in. The dent from the previous summer had disappeared. The metal appeared to be fresh from the factory because it was smooth and undamaged. I took back roads the remainder of the way home. 3 more hours were needed. 4 months have passed since then. I still occasionally drive on the highway. I've never seen the figures again, but I have to for work. The order of the exits is correct. I'm normally passed by other cars. However, I came across a picture last week while browsing a forum for strange road stories. At a rest stop in northern Michigan, they claimed to have discovered it, hidden beneath their windscreen wiper. No explanation, no note. It was an image of a car at night on a snow-covered highway. On the shoulder, beneath a flyover, a dark sedan came to a stop. Only a portion of the license plate was visible. I owned it. That was only the beginning of the tale, and from this point on, the road only gets darker. Before something moved into his head, I kept what I discovered in the glove box a secret from everyone. In February, I was traveling from Seattle to Portland, and my GPS indicated that I would save 40 minutes if I took the scenic route. It was one of those gloomy winter afternoons when the road and the sky appeared to merge. Everything was colorless and washed out. My check engine light came on after about 2 hours. It wasn't an emergency because it was steady and not blinking. However, I was in a remote area. Both sides are covered in dense forest. No cell phone service. Additionally, it had been at least 20 minutes since I had passed another vehicle. At the next wide spot, I made the decision to stop and at least look under the hood. There was a tiny gravel turnoff at mile marker 47 that was hardly noticeable from the road. Knowing that I wouldn't truly comprehend what I was seeing, I pulled in and opened the hood. Everything appeared to be all right. No odd odors, no smoke. Just as I was ready to return, I saw a small dirt road, almost entirely obscured by overgrown brush. The road leads into the trees, and there was a car at the edge of that road. It looked as though it had been sitting there for months, because it was covered in moss and pine needles. Perhaps a sedan from the early 2000s. I could see the interior was empty, despite the dirty windows. There was a jar in the driver's door. I ought to have gone. I had no motive to look into it. However, that curiosity is sparked in some way by an abandoned car in the woods. You are unable to adequately describe it. My boots crunched on the frozen ground as I moved over. The interior had an odor of decay and mildew. The ignition still had the keys in it. More out of curiosity than anything else, I reached in and attempted to turn them. The engine made a feeble click, but failed to start. Obviously, the battery is dead. I discovered the glove compartment was open at that point. There was a folded piece of paper and an old cracked screen cell phone inside. I opened the paper after picking it up. It was a rough but intricate hand-drawn map. It displayed the dirt path that led to a small square with the label cabin, and this precise road, mile marker 47, circled in red. Someone had scrawled, "If you see this, don't go to the cabin. Please just leave," beneath the map. It had nothing to do with the weather, but I felt cold. I peered down the unpaved path. It disappeared into shadow as it curved farther into the forest. There was a part of me that wanted to get back in my car and head out. However, the foolish part of me wanted to comprehend what I was observing. Why would someone leave their vehicle here? Why is there a warning? I headed down the path. I promised myself that I would only go far enough to check if a cabin was actually there before turning around. The majority of the remaining daylight was obscured as the trees swiftly closed in. In the quiet, my footsteps sounded too loud. I saw it about 5 minutes later, a tiny cabin tucked away in a clearing, hardly more than a shack. It was dark outside the windows. There was no chimney smoke. There are no indications of life. However, everything changed when a newer-looking pickup truck was parked next to it. There was someone here, or had been lately. I approached cautiously, my gut telling me to turn around. The front door was not locked, but it was closed. I knocked, but nobody answered. The door swung slightly inward when I knocked again, more forcefully this time. "Hi there." My voice sounded weak and unfamiliar. I opened the door more widely. It was dark inside, but I could see a single room, a camping stove, a small table, a cot in the corner, and a whole wall, numerous pictures arranged neatly in rows. My breath caught in my throat as I went inside to have a better look. They were all pictures of various car models and makes, parked in what appeared to be the same location, the mile marker 47 turnoff. A date was written in marker at the bottom of each picture. 3 years ago was the earliest. 2 weeks ago was the most recent, and there was a picture of my car in the middle of the wall. The model, color, and even the university parking sticker on the back window are all the same. However, it wasn't merely comparable. It was the same, and the picture appeared old and faded, as if it had been there for several months. My hands began to tremble. Without realizing there was no service, I instinctively took out my phone. Despite the harsh shadows cast by the flash, I managed to take a picture of the wall. I heard the truck doors slam outside at that moment. I froze. As they approached, footsteps crunched on the frozen ground. Heavy boots, slow gait. There was only the front door, and whoever was outside was going directly to it. There was no back door, no windows big enough to climb through. I only gnawed anything that came to mind. I tried to control my breathing as I pressed myself flat against the wall and squeezed behind the open door. When the footsteps got to the porch, they stopped. On the other side of the door, I could hear steady, slow breathing. Then there was a quiet, almost conversational voice. "You're in there. I know that." I stayed put, failed to breathe. "The vehicle remains warm. It hasn't been long since you left." A pause. "You ought to have paid attention to the message." I was staring at him when the door suddenly closed. A middle-aged man with a weathered face and a bulky canvas coat. He didn't appear hostile or menacing. He appeared worn out and depressed. "You're the third one this month," he murmured. I was able to say, "I'm sorry. I was just... You took a photo." "They keep coming. I try to warn them, but they never listen. I'm leaving." I nodded, unable to say anything. "Of the wall." With a sigh, he approached the table and took a chair. He took a heavy seat as if he had lost all of his energy. "It is irrelevant. In any case, you won't believe it. They all don't. You know what?" He pointed to the wall. "That I'm attempting to assist. That I'm recording what takes place here." His eyes were hollow as he gazed at me. "There's a problem with this section of road. Has been for many years. At 47, cars pull off. Drivers vanish. After my daughter's car was discovered here, I began keeping an eye on her. I edged towards the door and said, 'I have to go.' He went on, not attempting to stop me. 'That picture of your car. I scored a 6. Months prior, vehicle identical to yours, parked at the same time of day and in the exact same location. The driver disappeared into the woods. 2 days later, the car was discovered by the police. There are no indications of struggle. There are no footprints that lead anywhere. Simply vanished.' I took hold of the door handle. He said, 'Check the glove box in that abandoned car. The telephone. Take a look at the previous message.' I bolted. I didn't stop or turn around until I got to the road. The engine of my car was still running as it cooled. After jumping in and turning on the check engine light, I peeled out onto the highway. Before I felt secure enough to pull over, I drove for an hour, under bright fluorescent lights at a petrol station. At last, I allowed myself to consider his remarks regarding the phone in the abandoned car. I turned around, despite my best efforts to persuade myself to continue driving. When I returned to mile marker 47, it was almost dark. There was still the abandoned car. I hurried over to it, took the phone out of the glove box, and hurried back to my car. My hands were trembling so much that I could hardly contain it. I had a suitable charger, but the phone was dead. After plugging it in, I waited. It turned on after a few minutes. 1 battery bar. I could see the pictures and messages, but there was no service. The most recent text message was in drafts and had no sent. It was addressed to Mom, a contact. "There's a cabin in the woods. Someone's been taking pictures of cars. I think he's been watching me. If you get this, that's where it cut off," the message said. I scrolled over to the pictures. The most recent ones depicted the cabin's interior as well as the wall of photos. In a few shots, taken from slightly different perspectives, I could make out a figure, standing in the window behind the photographer's reflection. observing. I examined the photo's date stamps. The man had indicated that they were taken 6 months ago. I looked down the dirt road after dropping the phone. I knew the cabin was there, even though I couldn't see it from here. I also knew that he was most likely still there, including my picture in his collection, at mile marker 47, waiting for the next vehicle to leave. I continued driving until I got to Portland. I never went back that way. However, occasionally late at night, that wall of pictures, all those cars, all those people, and the question I never asked come to mind at night. Why did he have a picture of my car 6 months before I ever drove that road if he was recording people who vanished? That phone is still with me. Never again have I turned it on. I received a text message from an unidentified number last week. Nothing to say, only a picture attachment. Taken from across the street, it was my car parked in my driveway. It was taken yesterday, according to the timestamp. The bathroom door was within. In late January, I was traveling through Wyoming on my way to a job interview in Cheyenne. There were only me, a few long-haul truckers, and an endless gray sky on the almost deserted interstate. After 6 hours of driving, I noticed the rest stop sign 20 meters ahead. I needed to use the lavatory and stretch my legs, but my petrol tank was fine. I was still feeling the effects of the coffee I had 3 hours prior. I was the only vehicle in the lot when I eventually arrived at the rest stop. I didn't see any drivers, but there were 2 semi-trucks parked at the far end. One of those older state-run establishments was the rest stop. The building is made of concrete, has little lighting, and has informative signs about the local wildlife that no one reads. Accessible from the outside, the men's room was located on the building's side. I saw someone standing close to the entrance as I approached it. An elderly man with a mop in his maintenance uniform. He nodded slightly and said, "Afternoon." I smiled politely at him and said, "Hey," as I passed. There was nobody in the lavatory. There were 2 urinals, 3 stalls, and fluorescent lights that flickered and hummed too loudly. As soon as I entered the first cubicle, I saw that the lock was broken, only a tiny piece of metal dangling from the door. I gave the second stall a try. The same thing. The lock on the third stall appeared to be intact, but when I tested it, it failed to catch correctly. I paused. Really, it wasn't that big of a deal. I would be quick, and the loo was empty. I used the second stall, leaving the door open just enough to see if anyone entered. I had only been there for 30 seconds when I heard the outside door open. The tile reverberated with footsteps. They came to a stop right outside my stall. A voice said, "All the locks are broken. The man who does maintenance. Last week, vandals arrived while awaiting replacement parts." I said, feeling uncomfortable. "Oh, all right," he went on. "I'll make sure nobody comes in. Take your time." I suppose it was a thoughtful gesture, but I felt uneasy about it for some reason. The way he'd felt compelled to clarify it. The way he was simply waiting. I opened the cubicle door as soon as I was done. He was observing me in the mirror while he stood by the sinks, still holding his mop. "Have a safe drive," he said. I quickly cleaned my hands and walked away, my skin crawling for unknown reasons. I looked over my shoulder as I made my way back to my car. He was watching me leave from the bathroom doorway. I tried to get rid of the uneasiness by sitting in my car for a short while. It wasn't anything. Simply an excessively amiable maintenance employee. To check the route, I took out my phone. As was usual out here, there was still no service. I became aware of something on my windscreen at that point. Tucked beneath the wiper blade was a tiny piece of paper. I grabbed it after getting out. It was a 2-day-old receipt from a petrol station. Someone had written in pencil on the back, "The blue Toyota plate is left at 234 and ends at 47J. The last number on my number plate was 47J. My dashboard clock indicated that it was 2:33 p.m. when I was driving a blue Toyota. I scanned the parking lot. I still didn't see any drivers, but the semi-trucks were still there. The building's maintenance man had returned inside. The wind was the only sound. I told myself it was a practical joke as I crumpled the paper and tossed it in my car. Perhaps truckers left fictitious notes, wrote random license plates, and did this to kill time. But when I turned on the engine, my hands were trembling. I drove back onto the interstate. After 10 minutes or so, I noticed another vehicle following me. About a quarter of a mile back, a white sedan was keeping pace. I was unable to see the driver. While keeping the same distance, the sedan also accelerated. I was being paranoid, I told myself. It was a highway. Individuals drive at comparable speeds. It was meaningless. However, the sedan then shifted lanes, got closer, and I was able to see the driver in my rearview mirror. Still in his uniform, it was the maintenance man from the rest stop. With his hands at 10 and 2, he was following at a steady distance, without looking at me. My heart began to race. I increased my accelerator pressure to 85 miles per hour. The sedan easily kept up with my speed. He changed lanes when I did. He slowed down in response to my slowing down to see what he would do. I reached for my phone. There is still no service. I continued to drive, my thoughts whirling with possibilities. 40 miles ahead was the next town. Between here and there had to be other vehicles, people, or something. However, the road remained deserted. In this strange procession across frozen Wyoming, it was just the white sedan and me. 20 minutes later, 5 miles ahead, I noticed a sign for another rest stop. I was unwilling to give up. My gut told me to continue driving. However, I also didn't want to guide him to my destination. There might be other people at a rest stop, at the very least, witnesses. I went out the door, the sedan trailed behind. Compared to the previous rest stop, this one was larger. There were perhaps a dozen cars strewn about the parking lot. I parked close to the main building so that I could see people through the windows. 3 spots away was where the sedan parked. I stared at my mirror while sitting in my car. The maintenance man remained inside. He simply sat there, staring ahead with his hand still on the wheel. I waited for 5 minutes. He remained motionless. At last, I stepped outside and hurried in the direction of the building. He hadn't moved yet. I entered an official visitor center with restrooms, vending machines, and an information desk manned by an elderly woman. I tried to sound steady as I said, "Excuse me, I've been being followed by a man in the parking lot." 3 spots from the entrance is a white sedan. She picked up a phone with a worried expression. "I'll give the highway patrol a call. What would you say about him?" Yes, I did. I looked out the window while I was speaking. The driver was no longer visible, but the white sedan was still there. The call came from the woman and assured me that someone would arrive in roughly 15 minutes. "You can wait here," she said politely. Thankful for something to do with my hands, I said, "Would you like some coffee?" I observed the parking lot while sitting by the window. The sedan remained motionless. 10 minutes later, I noticed a highway patrol vehicle arrive. The policeman exited and walked over to the white sedan. Nothing took place. He tried the door after knocking more forcefully. It opened. There was nothing in the car. I observed as the officer straightened up and surveyed the parking lot after looking inside and inspecting the rear seat. He approached the structure and entered. "I'm Officer Hicks, ma'am." "Have you reported being followed?" I gave a thorough explanation. The note, the first rest stop, and the sedan that followed me for miles. He paid close attention while taking notes. According to him, the car is registered to a Laram-based maintenance company. No one is currently in or near the car, despite the fact that I ran the plates. "Have you seen the driver's destination?" I gave a head shake. The entire time, I was observing. I didn't witness him leaving. The officer appeared professional but perplexed. "I'll inspect the grounds and restrooms. I would advise getting back on the road in the interim. For a while, I will follow you." A sense of relief swept over me. I thanked him and made my way back to my vehicle. The driver's door of the white sedan remained slightly ajar. I looked inside as I went by. The passenger seat had a clipboard. A list of names, dates, and license plate numbers was visible to me. My own, The plate number, today's date, and the time I had left the first rest stop, 2:34 p.m., were all at the bottom. The officer was leaving the building when someone wrote, "Next stop, Cheyenne," beneath that. I gestured to the clipboard. His expression darkened as he leaned in and peered. "Stay here," he commanded. After using his phone to take pictures of the clipboard, he placed a call. His body language had changed, but I couldn't hear what he was saying. More tense, more pressing. His face was carefully neutral when he returned. "You're going to accompany me to the next town. The sheriff's office is located there. I believe a formal report should be filed." I inquired. He paused. "Other dates? Different license plates? We must investigate it." The officer's patrol car followed me the entire way as we caravanned to the next town. My statement was taken at the sheriff's station. I was asked to give a detailed description of the maintenance man. I was shown pictures of local registered sexual offenders. They didn't match. I'm going to investigate the remaining license plates on that list. I was informed by the detective. "Are you able to stay somewhere else tonight in the interim?" "The home of a friend. We would rather you stay home for a little while." I said I was heading to Cheyenne for tomorrow's job interview. "I'd suggest delaying it," she muttered, "for a few days only, until we figure out what's going on." I called off the interview. Instead, I took a 3-hour drive to my sister's home in Colorado. I just told her that I had to crash for a few nights due to car trouble. The white sedan's owner, a maintenance contractor, reported his car stolen 2 days before I saw it, and the police called me once to let me know they had located him. No employees matched the man I had described. The officers and my fingerprints were the only ones on the clipboard. They discovered the beginning of this at the first rest stop. I had seen a maintenance man, but he was not employed there. There was not a single state employee who fit his description. Additionally, all of the bathroom locks were in perfect operating order when they were inspected. They were all intact. I never learned his identity or the reason behind his pursuit of me. I haven't heard anything in more than a week, despite the police claiming that the investigation is still ongoing. I received a letter in the mail yesterday, postmarked from Cheyenne, with no return address. A photocopy of that same gas station receipt with my license plate and departure time was found inside. However, a second line of writing, in a different handwriting, was present underneath this time. At 7:48 p.m., the blue Toyota pulled up to the sister's house, stayed for 3 weeks, and welcome home, in the same tidy script at the bottom. I haven't yet reported this to the police. I'm not sure what they could accomplish. Every lock in my apartment has been examined 3 times. Everywhere I go, I've been glancing over my shoulder. But what frightens me the most is that I kept it a secret from everyone. Nobody, not my sister, not the police. When did I get to her house that evening? My car was just inspected. Another note is located beneath the windscreen wiper. Before I told him my daughter's name, he knew it. I was traveling south on Highway 52 through farmland in Minnesota, on my way back from a conference in Minneapolis. The weather forecast for early February had called for clear skies. However, at 4 p.m., the snow began to fall. Thick, heavy flakes that my wipers could hardly keep up with were suddenly dumped, not gradually. I ought to have stopped. I ought to have looked for a hotel. However, I had promised my daughter that I would return for her school play that night, and I was only 2 hours away from home. She was the main character. I was unable to miss it. The visibility deteriorated. I followed the faint red glow of taillights ahead of me and slowed to 40, then 30. After that, those taillights disappeared, leaving me on the highway by myself. I felt the steering pull to the right at that point. The car wasn't reacting correctly when I tried to fix it, with my hazard lights blinking ineffectively in the whiteout. I was able to steer it onto the shoulder and stop. I went outside to make sure. The passenger tire at the back was totally flat. With snow already building up on my coat, I stood in the wind and gazed at it. I kept an extra in the trunk. With YouTube instructions open on my phone, I had changed a tire precisely once before in a summertime parking lot. I just looked at my phone. Of course, no service. As I was taking out the jack after opening the trunk, I noticed headlights coming from behind. About 20 feet back, a pickup truck slowed and pulled onto the shoulder. Wearing a bulky winter coat and hat, a man emerged. "Do you need assistance?" he shouted as he approached me. I felt a wave of relief. Tire that is flat. I've never done this in the snow, but I have a spare. No issue. In any case, my truck has better tools. His friendly voice was somewhat muffled by the scarf that covered his face. There was only his eyes, and they wrinkled as if he were grinning. He worked effectively, after bringing over a tire iron and a suitable jack. I watched the snow build up on the highway as I stood close by, shielding myself from the cold. While working, he inquired, "Where are you headed?" "Archester. My daughter has a school play tonight. I'm already cutting it close." "That's nice. What's her name?" "Emma," I replied. "In The Wizard of Oz, she portrays Dorothy. She has spent months honing her skills." He grunted as he undid a lug nut and repeated, "Emma. It's a lovely name. What is your age?" "9. He nodded and carried on with his work. "You take 52 all the way down," he said after a minute. "Yeah, straight shot. You might want to think about going through Byron instead. Take County Road 14. It's a little longer, but it's better maintained in snow like this. The highway is just going to get worse." "Thank you so much for stopping. I don't know what I would have done. Happy to help." He tightened the last lug nut and got up, brushing snow off his knees. He waved me away, saying, "No need. Just glad Emma's mom will make it to her play. Drive safe." I thanked him once more and got back in my car. He loaded his tools into his truck, and we both pulled back onto the highway. His truck stayed behind me for a few miles before taking an exit. I continued south, feeling thankful for the kindness of strangers. Spars on. You'll want to get the flat properly fixed soon, but this will get you home. Thank you so much. After about 20 minutes, I saw the turnoff he'd mentioned, County Road 14, towards Byron. The highway ahead appeared worse, and his advice seemed sound, so I took the exit. The county road was narrower, winding through farmland and sparse woods. But he was right. It had recently been plowed, and the driving was easier. I checked the GPS on my dashboard, but it kept flickering, trying and failing to recalculate the route. That's when it dawned on me, since I'd driven away. You'll get home with that. As I continued driving, I noticed a car parked on the shoulder ahead, with hazard lights blinking. As I got closer, I saw a woman standing next to it, waving at me. She appeared distressed, and since I had just received assistance from a stranger, it seemed appropriate to pay it forward. I stopped and rolled down my window. Perhaps I had mentioned it. Perhaps I had said home without thinking. The conversation was already hazy in my memory, distorted by cold and stress. She hurried over, her face flushed from the cold, and said, "Thank God someone stopped. My car died. Do you have a phone? I can't get any service." "I don't have service either, but I can give you a ride to the next town. There should be a gas station." "Actually," she interrupted, "did you happen to pass a pickup truck on your way here? My husband was supposed to be behind me, but I lost sight of him in the snow." "A pickup truck?" I asked. "What color?" "My husband was the dark blue guy who stopped to help you." My blood froze. "What?" "He called me about 10 minutes ago and said he'd helped a woman change a tire and was on his way to find me." "Did you pass him?" "I took an exit a while back before this turnoff," and she looked perplexed. "He said he was taking County Road 14, and he'd told someone else to take it too, because the highway was bad." "How did he call you if there's no service?" "We have satellite phones." I asked, barely raising my voice above a whisper. "Are you okay? You look pale." "How did he know where I lived?" "What? Your husband? He said something about getting me home, but I never told him where home was." She looked at me and said, "That wasn't my husband." "But you just said," I said, "my husband helped someone and was taking County Road 14, but my husband drives a dark blue pickup." At her own car. That's our car. He's not even with me. He's at work in Minneapolis. Then who did you talk to? I didn't talk to anyone. My phone's dead. She stepped back from my car, her expression shifting from bewilderment to fear. I never said any of that. You did. I realized she was correct. She had asked if I'd seen a pickup truck, and I'd filled in all the other details myself, details that hadn't come from her. I urgently said, "Get in the car, right now." She didn't argue. She ran around to the passenger side and jumped in. I locked the doors and started driving. "What's going on?" she asked. "I don't know, but that man who helped me knew things he shouldn't have known, and he sent me down this road specifically." We drove in silence for a minute. Then she said quietly, "There's a truck behind us." I looked in the rearview mirror. Headlights maybe a 4 mile back, coming up fast. "Is it him?" "I can't tell," she muttered. I pressed the accelerator, but the road was too snowy to go much faster safely. The truck was gaining. I could see it more clearly now. Dark-colored, definitely a pickup, the same one that had helped me. "What do we do?" she asked. I don't know. We were surrounded by deserted fields and woods, with no houses, no lights, and nowhere to go. The next town was at least 10 miles away, and my mind was racing. The truck was now directly behind us, matching our speed, but I couldn't see the driver through the snow and headlight glare. Then it pulled into the other lane as if to pass us, and I held my breath. It approached us, and I forced myself to keep my eyes on the road ahead, staying parallel for what seemed like an eternity, before it gradually pulled ahead and vanished into the snow. We drove in stunned silence for 5 more minutes, before either of us said anything. "Did that really just happen?" "I believe so," she inquired. "When we get service, should we call the police and tell them what?" "A man suggested a route and changed my tire. I need to call someone to pick me up," she said. "My car's still back there. I'll wait with you," I said. I don't think either of us should be alone right now. Her boyfriend arrived 20 minutes later. She gave me her number and made me promise to text her when I got home safely. I promised, though I wasn't sure it would make me feel any better. I got back on the main highway and drove the rest of the way without incident. I arrived at Emma's play with 10 minutes to spare, and she was amazing. I cheered louder than anyone else. That evening, after putting Emma to bed, I texted the woman from the road, saying, "I hope you made it home safely. I hope you did too." She replied right away. "What woman?" I asked, perplexed as I looked at my phone. I looked through my messages to see where we had exchanged phone numbers. Nothing was present. No prior conversation, no exchange. I dialed the number. A man responded. "Hello?" "I apologize," I replied. "I believe my number is incorrect. Who are you attempting to contact?" "I met this woman earlier tonight on County Road 14. A long silence ensued. "County Road 14 is close to Byron." "Indeed, lady. It has been closed for the entire day. This morning the state shut it down. Black ice and drifting snow. Since yesterday, no one has been using that road." I ended the call. I looked through my phone logs. I gave that number a call. It is genuine. However, I haven't texted anyone, and I can't recall the woman's true appearance. Simply put, she was afraid and icy. Emma asked me at breakfast this morning, "Did my play appeal to you?" "Sweetheart, you were incredible. The greatest Dorothy ever." She poured cereal and said, "I'm glad you made it." "You might not," the man who called said. My coffee mug almost fell. "Which man?" "The man who had called at 3:30 earlier. He mentioned that you were having problems with your car and that he was one of your friends. He wanted to make sure that if you were running late, I wouldn't be concerned. We've discussed this, Emma. When I'm not home, you shouldn't pick up the phone." He was aware of my name, though. "Is Emma there?" he asked, so I assumed it was all right. I looked at my call history. That afternoon, no calls came in. Not one. "Did he say anything else?" "Just that he had assisted you and that you were on your way." She stopped and glanced at her cereal. Dorothy is also your favorite character, he said. You named me Emma, after Emma, because of this. Dorothy. Is that accurate? My hands began to tremble. Dorothy is Emma's middle name. I've never explained the reason to her. She is too young to comprehend. In my whole life, I've only told 3 people. My sister, my mother, and my former spouse. Was there anything else he said? Just that you would know what it meant. That you would recall. Do you recall what? Who was he? She gave me a naive glance. Eyes. David was his name, he said. You would recall David from the winter, he said. My college boyfriend was David. 20 years ago, in February, he was killed in a car accident on County Road 14. Someone was sitting in my rear seat. In the middle of January, I was traveling through Nebraska on I-80 on my way home from a business trip in Denver. It was one of those bitterly cold days when the wind cuts like a knife across the plains, and the sun shines brightly but offers no warmth. Approximately 200 p.m., I moved into the right lane after merging onto the highway. There were few cars and mostly trucks in the light traffic. I had loaded up a true crime podcast to kill time while I drove for 6 hours. After an hour or so, I saw a car in the left lane following me. A gray sedan, a little older model, followed me at precisely the same speed for a few minutes. I looked over. The driver was a middle-aged woman who was looking straight ahead while wrapped in a winter coat. Really, nothing out of the ordinary. Unbeknownst to them, people occasionally simply zone out and pace other cars. I accelerated a little to get past her. She also accelerated. She was as fast as I was. More than anything, it irritated me. When I shifted lanes to follow her, she instantly slowed down, making me decide whether to apply the brakes or go past her once more. She also moved over when I pulled back into the right lane, trapping me next to a semi-truck. Maybe 10 minutes passed during this. She always adjusted to stay right next to me when I tried to put some distance between us. I slowed down to 55 in a 70 zone because I was finally frustrated. I lost sight of her as she fell back. Feeling foolish for allowing it to bother me, I let out a sigh. Peculiarities of the road. When people are distracted or exhausted, they act strangely. I came to a rest stop 20 minutes later. I needed a bathroom break and some coffee. It was almost empty in the parking lot. There was only one car close to the entrance, and a few trucks at the far end. The sedan was gray. I was a little uncomfortable, but I convinced myself it was just a coincidence. For miles, this was the only place to rest. She would, of course, also stop here. I parked a few spots away and went inside. With her back to me, the woman stood close to the vending machines. After using the loo and purchasing coffee from a machine that appeared to have not been cleaned in years, I left again. I noticed her standing next to my car as I got closer. Not by her car, but by mine. With her hands cupped around her eyes, she was looking through the passenger window to see what was inside. "May I assist?" "You?" I yelled, attempting to maintain a steady tone. She gave a little start and spun around. She appeared worn out up close. Her hair was disheveled, there were deep bags under her eyes, and she exuded anxiety. "I'm so sorry," she blurted out. I looked from her gray sedan to my silver SUV and said, "I thought this was my car. They look similar." They didn't have the same appearance. "No problem," I replied as I moved to the driver's side. All I wanted to do was get out. "Hold on," I paused with my hand on the door handle and asked, "Can I ask you something? Are you traveling alone?" I felt compelled to lie. "No, my husband's sleeping in the back." Her expression changed as she glanced at my back seat, which was empty, save for my overnight bag. Not quite a smile, but close. "All right," she murmured. "Be careful when driving." As soon as I got into my car, I locked the doors. She returned to her sedan, climbed in, and simply sat. I swiftly exited the parking lot while continuously looking in my rearview mirror. She didn't go along. I returned to the highway and made an effort to relax. My hands were trembling. I turned up the heat and made myself concentrate on the road. 30 minutes went by. I began to unwind. Then I noticed the gray sedan once more. I have 3 vehicles in my right lane behind me. My stomach fell. It was still just a coincidence, I told myself. Same direction, same highway. However, I couldn't get rid of the impression that something wasn't quite right. I made the decision to test it. I went out the next door. A haphazard off-ramp led to a small town I had never heard of. I circled back to the highway entrance after passing a closed diner and a petrol station on the deserted main street. The gray sedan was parked in front of the road at the gas station. It pulled out and followed me back onto the highway as I passed. I was certain she was following me on purpose this time. I reached for my phone. One service bar. I dialed 911. What's your emergency? 911. I'm at mile marker 312 on I-80 heading east. An automobile has been following me for more than an hour. At a rest stop, the driver confronted me. Are you in danger right now? I'm not sure. Right now, she's behind me. Can you see the license plate on the car? I tried to get a clear view by adjusting my rearview mirror. It's too distant. An older gray sedan, possibly a Honda. A state trooper is being sent to your location by me. Are you able to remain on the line? Indeed, I was kept on the phone by the dispatcher, who inquired about the vehicle and my location. My gaze darted between the road and my mirror as I continued to drive. The sedan kept a safe distance, never approaching too closely or falling too far behind. A trooper is about 8 miles ahead, ma'am. He is waiting for you by pulling over. Is mile marker 320 visible to you? Not just yet. Hold on. I do see it, yes. All right. The trooper has just passed 323. Slow down and stop behind his car when you see him. Don't give up before you get to him. I get it. 321 is the mile marker. There was still the sedan. 322 is the mile marker. My hands hurt from holding onto the steering wheel. 323 is the mile marker. On the shoulder, I noticed the state trooper's vehicle with flashing lights. With my heart pounding, I slowed and stopped behind him. Maintaining highway speed, the gray sedan passed us and vanished around a bend. The soldier came up to my window. I gave a thorough explanation. The peculiar pace. The following was halted by the others. He paid close attention while taking notes. Did she make any threats or attempt to hurt you? No, but she asked if I was alone after looking inside my car. He gave a nod. I'll run her plates. Have you received them? No, she was always too distant. All right, I can follow you for the next 50 meters or so. Make sure you are not bothered by anyone. To what extent are you traveling? Omaha. 4 more hours or so. I'll take you all the way to Lincoln. If necessary, I can turn you over to other troopers. It was a tremendous relief. I'm grateful. For the next hour, he trailed me. His patrol car was a reassuring presence every time I looked in the mirror. The gray sedan vanished from my view. He pulled up next to me on the highway near Lincoln, flashed his lights, and motioned for me to roll down my window. He called over, I'm going to leave here. From this point on, you should be all right. Good visibility and lots of traffic. But if you see that car again, dial 911 right away. All right? All right. I really appreciate it. He left, and I went on by myself. The sky was turning purple and orange as the sun began to set. As I approached Omaha, traffic increased. Typical rush hour in the evening. At last, I gave myself permission to think it was over. About 40 minutes from home, I made a gas stop. There were many people in the well-lit, bustling station. After filling up, I went inside to pay and got a bottle of water. A note was hidden beneath my windscreen wiper when I returned outside. My heart stopped. I scanned the parking lot. There were dozens of cars and people, but there was no gray sedan, and the woman was nowhere to be seen. With trembling hands, I picked up the note and opened it. It was a receipt from this petrol station that was timed approximately half an hour ago and was dated today. In the rear, "I'm sorry for scaring you. I wasn't following you. I was trying to warn you. Check your back seat before you drive," was written in neat handwriting. I stood motionless for a moment before carefully making my way to my SUV's rear door. I cracked it open. I had unzipped my overnight bag. Clothes had been thrown aside, toiletries rearranged, and the contents had been combed through. There was nothing missing, but it was clear that someone had been inside, and there was a man's jacket pressed up against the seat beneath my bag. The canvas was heavy and smelt like cigarettes and something else I couldn't place. I didn't own it. It was something I had never seen before. With my phone in my hand, I retreated from the vehicle and dialed 911 once more. They asked me 100 questions, took the jacket, and dusted it for prints. When was the last time I looked at my back seat? I had stopped where? Had I ever left my car unlocked? I was unable to recall. Perhaps the others stopped. I hadn't noticed anything else because I had been so preoccupied with the woman. They were truthful with me, despite filing a report. They couldn't do much because they didn't know who owned the jacket or when it was put there. They advised me to park in a well-lit area and have someone follow me home. I gave my brother a call. He followed me to my flat after meeting me at the petrol station. I wasn't the only one inside. He looked in every window, closet, and room, but found nothing. I made him swear to check on me in the morning and gave him the extra key. I had trouble falling asleep that night. I couldn't stop thinking about the woman in the gray sedan, asking if I was alone, as she peered through my windows. I hadn't been threatened by her. She had been attempting to communicate with me. My brother called the following morning. "Last night, did you move your car?" "No." "Why?" "You didn't park it there. It's 2 spaces away." I descended the stairs. He was correct. My keys were in my apartment, but my car was parked in a different location, angled slightly as if someone had moved it. I had examined the locks 3 times. There were 2 sets of keys. Beneath the windscreen wiper was another note. "He now has a set as well." He simply said, "I found your spare key under the wheel well." That's how he was getting in. "I moved your car so you'd know to check. Be careful." I never had an extra key. Notwithstanding, beneath my vehicle, nevertheless, I checked. On the underside of my rear bumper, there was a magnetic key holder, empty. That day, I had my locks changed. 2 weeks later, I sold the car. I reported the key to the police, but they had no leads. Who put that jacket in my car is still a mystery to me. I have no idea who had been entering, how long they had been there, or what their plans were. Furthermore, I never learned the identity of the woman in the gray sedan, or how she found out. However, I occasionally consider her question at the rest stop late at night. "Are you traveling by yourself?" And I wonder what would have happened if I had been honest with her. I discovered something I don't remember taking while looking through old pictures on my phone last week. This photo was taken from behind my car while I was traveling on the highway. The rear window lets you see the back of my head. And in the back window's reflection, which is hardly noticeable but unmistakably present, someone is seated in the rear seat. That drive through Nebraska is where the photo was taken, according to the timestamp. In the car, I was by myself. I know I was, but that photo was taken by someone. My credit card was previously held by the attendant. I handed it to him. In mid-February, I was traveling from Billings to Missoula for my sister's birthday, while traveling through rural Montana. There were long stretches of nothing along the way, only far-off mountains, snow-covered fields, and the occasional ranch house tucked away from the road. I had underestimated how long the trip would take, but I had left early to avoid driving in the dark. By 6:00 p.m., I was still 2 hours away from Missoula as the sun began to set. I had a quarter of a full tank of petrol. I prefer to stay above half on these kinds of deserted highways, but it's not crucial. At the next exit, I noticed a sign for a petrol station. Not a chain, but one of those tiny, independent establishments. The sign appeared to be outdated. Gas was gas, and I had no idea when I would see another station, even though the paint was faded and peeling. I drove a mile or so down a two-lane road after taking the exit. Around a bend came the petrol station. Fluorescent lights flicker in a single building with two pumps. No other vehicles or structures could be seen in any direction. I arrived at the pump and exited. I was immediately struck by a sharp, biting cold. Up close, the station appeared even more dilapidated. Windows were filthy, the concrete was cracked, and a handwritten open sign was just barely visible through the grime. At the pump, I swiped my card. The screen remained empty. I gave it another go. Nothing. Pay was written in marker on a piece of tape that was placed over the card reader. With a sigh, I made my way to the building. When I opened the door, a bell chimed. The smell of old coffee and a faintly chemical scent pervaded the dimly lit interior. The walls were lined with shelves filled with dusty goods that appeared to have been there for years. Nothing has a price tag. A man in his 60s, with a baseball cap and a stained jacket, stood behind the counter. Even before I shut the door, he was staring at me. "Assist you." His tone was emotionless and flat. I said, "Pump 2. I'll accept $40. He remained motionless, gazing at me with watery, pale eyes. "Pump 2, I said again. "Gas costs $40. He carefully reached under the counter and extracted my credit card. My real card, the one I still hadn't removed from my wallet. I gave my coat pocket a pat. There was still my wallet. He slid the card across the counter in my direction and asked, "How did your pumps activate?" I took it up. It was unquestionably my card. I hadn't given it to him, but it was the same name and last 4 digits. I was certain of it. I said, "I don't understand. I had this in my wallet. When you came in, you handed it to me." He spoke as though he were trying to explain something to a young child. "No, I didn't." He merely gazed at me. "Pumps activated. Better fill up before it gets colder," he said after a long, uncomfortable silence. I kept my eyes on him as I retreated towards the door. I couldn't quite put my finger on what was wrong. All I knew was that I had to get petrol and head out. I stood outside by the pump, raising the nozzle with a trembling hand. I kept looking at the building, where I could see the attendant standing in the same spot and observing me through the window. The gas pumped painfully slowly. I observed the numbers increasing. 10, 15, $20. Come on, come on. I became aware of the security camera above the pump at that point. The red recording light was steady, and it was aimed straight at me. However, there was something strange about it. The angle was incorrect. It was pointing at my car's driver's side door, where someone would be sitting, rather than the pump itself. $25, $30. A truck turned down the access road in the direction of the station after pulling off the highway. I felt a wave of relief. I would no longer be by myself here. However, the truck slowed down as it got closer, stopping on the access road about 50 yards away. With its engine running and its headlights aimed at the station, it simply sat there. $35 to $40, the pump shut off with a click. I quickly went back inside to sign after hanging up the nozzle. The receipt. The attendant had not moved an inch from where she was. Without saying anything, he slid a receipt across the counter. I hurriedly signed it before turning to go. "You should check your trunk," he said. I froze. "What? What about your trunk?" "Prior to returning to the highway, you should check it." "Why would I look in my trunk?" He cocked his head a little. It was his first genuine movement due to its contents. Now my heart was racing. "My trunk is empty, merely an emergency supply kit." "Then you have nothing to be concerned about." His face remained unchanged. "Be careful when driving." I practically bolted for my vehicle. There was still the truck on the access road, idling. I entered, shut the doors, and turned on the engine. I glanced in my rearview mirror as I drove away. Now that I was leaving, the attendant was standing outside in the cold, without a coat. My thoughts were racing as I drove back to the highway. Do I need to look in the trunk? No, that was crazy. He was merely attempting to frighten me. There was an odd power outage in the middle of nowhere. However, what if he had inserted something? I thought to myself. What if someone had stopped it while I was inside, confused about the credit card? You're acting suspiciously. I drove after merging back onto the highway. I was at my breaking point after 10 minutes. I turned off the engine, pulled onto the shoulder, and exited. As I had left it, the trunk was locked. I opened it. There was my emergency kit. A blanket, a torch, a first aid kit. Nothing unusual. I saw something just as I was going to close it. I didn't fold the blanket the way I usually do. I'm picky about how I arrange my trunk, so it was a minor issue that might not have any significance. I raised the blanket. There was a cell phone underneath. It's a different phone, not mine. An older model with a bright pink case. It was something I had never seen before. I picked it up and hit the power button with shaking hands. It had died. I tried to figure out what was going on as I stood on the side of the road with this weird phone. I returned to my car and headed for the next town. There was a sheriff's office, but the area was small, just a few streets. After parking outside, I entered. My story about the gas station, the credit card, and the phone in my trunk was heard by the constable working at the desk. He asked for the phone, took notes, and instructed me to wait. 20 minutes later, he returned with an odd look on his face. "We charged the phone, ma'am. It contains just one saved contact. An area code of 406. That's Montana local. We attempted to call it. It's also your phone number. Your mobile phone." My face began to lose blood. "That is not feasible. We gave it 2 tries. It went to your voicemail both times. I don't know whose phone that is, but it's your name and everything. It is something I have never seen before. There's something else," he said with a slow nod. "The text message history shows one conversation. Messages sent over the last 3 weeks, all to your number." "What did they say?" He hesitated. "They're descriptions of your car, your license plate, your daily routine, times you leave for work, routes you take, places you stop." He paused. "The last message was sent 2 hours ago. It says, 'She's taking Route 12. We will arrive at the station at approximately 6 p.m. The space began to spin. "It looks like someone has been following me. We're going to need you to file a formal report, and I'd recommend not going home tonight. Is there somewhere else you can stay?" I called my sister from the sheriff's office, and she picked me up, and we went to her place in Missoula. I didn't return home for 3 days. The police tracked down the phone, which turned out to be a burner that was bought with cash at a Walmart in Billings. There were no fingerprints, so there was no way to track who purchased it. The messages had been sent from different locations along Route 12, all of which I had driven in the weeks before that trip. Someone had been following me, recording my movements, and talking to someone else about it. When the police questioned the petrol station attendant, he denied everything, claiming that I had come in, paid with cash rather than a credit card, and left. The security footage from the station was conveniently corrupted, so they couldn't prove he wasn't in. However, I occasionally think about that gas station attendant, how he had my credit card before I gave it to him, and how he knew there was something in my trunk. I also think about that truck that pulled off the highway, the one that just sat there watching, but never came closer. Last week I was looking through my recent pictures. I don't remember taking most of them, but I came across a picture of me pumping gas, taken from inside my car through the windscreen, like someone was sitting in the... was sent to a single contact, a number with a 406 area code that I don't know. When I called it, a man answered in a flat, emotionless voice, saying, "Took you long enough," before hanging up and saying, "The number's disconnected now." Despite having the phone, the police claim they are powerless to act without additional proof. I occasionally receive text messages from unknown numbers late at night. A pin drop is all they ever say. A place. It's the same place every time. The petrol station is located at mile marker 47 on Route 12. The police still have the phone, but even though I haven't driven that route since February, The pink one from my trunk. Messages are still being sent. Yesterday was the last one. Eventually, she will return. There was no map of the road I was on. In late January, I was traveling through North Dakota to mine it from Grand Forks via Highway 2. About 3.5 hours was the estimated time for a straight shot. I knew every exit, every landmark, and every bend in the road because I had driven there a dozen times to see my elderly father. About 4 p.m., I saw a diversion sign about halfway through the drive. Large, reflective orange arrow pointing directly onto a county road. Closed road construction on Highway 2, the sign said. It was strange. The highway appeared to be in perfect condition ahead, and I had heard nothing about construction. However, detour signs are just that, detour signs. It was my turn. It was a narrow county road. Snow-covered level farmland is cut by 2 lanes. In a few miles, I estimated, it would loop back to the highway. I switched off my podcast so I could concentrate on the new path. 10 minutes or so later, I noticed another diversion sign. This one led to a smaller road on the left. I had no idea when I would return to Highway 2, or how far the diversion would go. Nevertheless, I followed it. What option did I have? The road narrowed. The farms vanished, to be replaced by dense tree clusters that didn't seem appropriate for this region of North Dakota. Long shadows were created on the snow by the sun, which was already low on the horizon. One more diversion sign. This time, turn right. I was becoming uncomfortable. For the past 20 minutes, I had been following diversion signs, and every turn led to ever tinier roads. I took out my phone to look at the GPS. There is no signal. My location appeared as a blank area on the map. White space, not even gray roads. I continued to drive. What more could I do? Try to turn around and go back where I came from. I wasn't even certain I could recall every turn. I noticed something about the next diversion sign. An X had been spray painted over the arrow, which was pointing left. Still dripping a little, in red paint. Don't, someone had written. I gripped the steering wheel more tightly. With my engine running, I came to a stop in the middle of the road and gazed at the vandalized sign. The official diversion arrow was orientated to the left. It was forbidden by the spray paint. The only other option was to look right. There was only a small lane that vanished into the trees, with no markings or signs. The road ended directly ahead at a gate that was closed and had signs indicating private property. Turn around, go left, or go right. I made those decisions. I made a right turn. The road deteriorated right away. Poorly maintained and riddled with potholes, I could feel through the snow. The branches of the trees formed a tunnel overhead as they pressed in close on both sides. My headlights, which had activated on their own as the light dimmed, appeared to barely cut through the deepening shadows. A few minutes later, I noticed something up ahead. Both lanes were blocked by a car that was parked sideways across the street. The dark blue sedan is empty, and its lights are off. I paused 30 feet back and bided my time. No one exited the vehicle. From the trees, no one emerged. I blew my horn. The trees drowned out the sound, making it sound lifeless. Nothing took place. I started backing up after putting my car in reverse. At that moment, I noticed the diversion sign in my rearview mirror, which was undoubtedly absent when I had passed it 2 minutes earlier. It had materialized behind me, with an arrow pointing in the direction of whatever was blocking the car. I gave up reversing. My heart was pounding. I glanced at the vehicle obstructing the road, and then at the trees on either side, which were too thick for a car to pass. I tried to think for a full minute while I sat there. The vehicle obstructing the road then began to move. Not operating a vehicle, rolling backward as though being pushed in neutral. It cleared the path by rolling off the road and into the ditch. Now I could see through its windows. Without a doubt, it was empty. All my instincts cried out for me to do anything but drive forward, to turn around. to back up until I found another way. However, a truck was now parked across the street behind me when I checked my rearview mirror. I hadn't seen headlights or heard it get closer. It was simply present. The only choice was to move forward. With trembling hands on the steering wheel, I slowly passed the sedan in the ditch. I saw something as I walked by. It appeared as though someone had recently breezed in through the windows, which were fogged up from the inside. However, I had noticed that it was empty. I could see lights through the trees as the road curved ahead. A structure. God be praised. A structure. Perhaps a home where I could use a phone, ask for directions, and figure out exactly where I was. It wasn't a home. It was a tiny church. Paint in white is peeling. In the last of the light, the cross on the steeple is hardly noticeable. There were about a dozen cars in the parking lot, all neatly arranged in rows. Inside, lights were on. After pulling into the parking lot, I sat there contemplating my options. A church was made up of people. People intended to assist. However, something didn't feel right. Concerning it, why was there a church at the end of an unmarked road, miles away from any town? People filed out in a queue, heads down, and made their way to their cars as I watched the church door open. Like they had practiced a drill, they moved in perfect unison. No one spoke. No one exchanged glances. They all boarded their vehicles. At precisely the same time, they all turned on their engines. They all turned to stare at me. They turned all of their heads towards me in perfect unison and stared, not just glanced. I didn't wait to find out what would happen next. I quickly turned around after putting my car in reverse and backing out of the parking lot. The vehicles failed to follow. They were idle as they sat there. Everyone inside was still fixated on the spot where I had parked. I accelerated and ignored the potholes as I drove back the way I had come. The truck had vanished by the time I arrived at the location where it had blocked the road. The sedan's headlights were now on and pointing towards the road, but it was still in the ditch. I continued to drive. I attempted to undo every turn I had made. The right turned to the left turned to the right. I passed the same vandalized diversion sign for what seemed like an hour. 3 times in various directions. I had no idea where I was. Totally, utterly lost. I noticed headlights up ahead at that point. The first moving car I had seen since the church was this one. I tried to flag them down so I could follow them out of this maze by flashing my high beams. Someone got out of the car when it stopped in the middle of the road with its door open. A middle-aged woman in a bulky winter coat. She began to move in my direction. As she got closer, I rolled down my window halfway. "Are you disoriented?" "Yes. I've been following diversion signs and she said in a kind but worried tone. "I am unable to return to Highway 2. "Where are you trying to go? Mean it." "I was on Highway 2. "Oh, you're way off course. But I can help," she said with a smile. "Just follow me. I'll lead you back to the highway." Relief washed over me. "Thank you so much." "No problem. Oh, one thing though." She nodded without surprise. "Many people get turned around out here. The detours are confusing." The relief vanished. "Don't look at the church when we pass it. Just keep your eyes on my taillights." "Can you do that?" "Yes, the white one. You probably passed it already. When we go by it again, just don't look. Trust me on this." "Why not?" Her smile remained unchanged. "Because if you look, you'll have to stop. And if you stop, you'll have to go inside. Everyone does. That's the rule." "What rule? What are you talking about?" "Just follow me. Keep your eyes forward. You'll be back on the highway in 20 minutes. She turned and walked back to her car, and I sat there frozen, watching her get in and drive until her taillights vanished around a bend. Instead of following her, I turned around and drove in the opposite direction, making haphazard turns, ignoring diversion signs, and simply trying to get away from wherever I was. The trees grew thinner, the road widened a little, and then, unbelievably, I saw Highway 2, the real highway, with its familiar green signs and steady traffic. I merged on, almost crying with relief, and drove straight to mine without stopping. I never figured out where I'd been, and when I tried to retrace the route on a map later, nothing matched up. The detour I'd taken didn't correspond to any county roads, and the church didn't exist in any database. When my father asked why I was 3H, I forgot I even had one running. The majority of it was corrupted, just static and jumbled audio, with the exception of one clear clip that shows me sitting at a stop sign I don't remember seeing. The timestamp indicates that I was stopped there for 47 minutes. In the video, I'm just sitting there, staring straight ahead, completely motionless, not checking my phone, not looking around, just staring. The church is in the background, barely visible in the rearview mirror, and I'm parked directly in front of it. The camera records me sitting there for 47 minutes. Last week, I received a letter with a picture of There was a car parked in front of that white church and a handwritten note that said, "Thank you for attending our service. We look forward to seeing you again." The envelope also contained a small diversion sign that looked like a souvenir and had an arrow pointing right. I've started seeing diversion signs every day on my drive to work near my apartment. They appear for a brief period of time before disappearing when I look again. But yesterday, one of them had something new written on it in red spray. Before I told her, she said my name. In early February, I was traveling through Vermont on my way back to Boston after an unsuccessful ski weekend. My friends had abruptly canceled, leaving me with a non-refundable cabin rental and 2 days of skiing alone. I had cut the trip short and was driving home on Sunday afternoon, taking Route 89 south. The weather was clear when I started, but around 3 p.m., the snow started to fall. It was light at first, then heavier, the kind of snow that blended in with the white road, white sky. I didn't usually pick up hitchhikers. As my mother instilled in me from an early age, I never stopped for strangers. But it was freezing. Visibility was getting worse, and she looked desperate. I pulled over about 20 feet ahead of her, and she ran to the passenger door and got in quickly, bringing a blast of cold air with her. "Thank you," she said, teeth chattering, as she stood on the shoulder, thumb out, wearing just a light jacket, hat, and gloves. "I really appreciate it. I've spent an hour outside. Where is your vehicle?" "Dad, I'm about 3 miles away. At last the battery failed. I'm heading to White River Junction. If you could just take me to the next exit, I can call someone. I'm going south. I can take you to White River. It was only about 20 minutes out of my way." "That would be amazing," she said, rubbing her hands together in an attempt to warm them. She then took out her phone, looked at the screen, and sighed. "Dead, of course. Could I borrow yours to let my sister know that I'm all right?" I gave her my phone, and she dialed, waited, and left a voicemail. "Hey, it's me. My car died, but someone gave me a ride. I'll be there soon. Don't worry," she said. "I'm Sarah, by the way." "Michael, I know." I looked at her. "What?" We drove in silence for a few minutes before she said, "You should take the next exit. Your name, Michael? It says it on your phone when it unlocked." She smiled slightly. That made sense. I nodded and concentrated on the road. The snow was falling more heavily now, and the wipers were barely keeping up. She said, "That's not the White River exit. That's still 10 miles ahead." "I know, but you should take it anyway." Her tone unnerved me. "Why?" "I just know. Trust me. Take exit 12. I didn't see any signs about an accident." "You won't. It hasn't happened yet." My hands tightened on the wheel. "What are you talking about?" "Michael, please just take the exit. There's a bad accident up ahead. The highway will be closed for hours." "How do you know that?" She didn't immediately respond. "I've been on this road every day for 3 months, and every time I tell someone to take exit 12, most of them don't listen." The exit was approaching, and I could see the sign through the snow. "Exit 12, half a mile." "I don't understand what you're saying, but you will. If you don't take this exit, you'll understand in about 5 minutes, and you'll wish you'd listened to me. Foot hovered between the brake and the gas. A part of me wanted to pull over and tell her to get out, but another part of me was curious or afraid enough to see what she meant. I took the exit. The off-ramp curved away from the highway, leading to a small access road. Sarah appeared to relax. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You have no idea how many people just keep driving." "Where am I going now?" "Take a right. Follow this road for 2 miles. Then you'll see a diner. We can wait there until the high hills." She didn't respond, so I followed her instructions. After about 2 miles, I noticed lights ahead. A small diner that looked like it had been there since the 1950s, with a neon sign flickering in the storm. The parking lot was empty, except for one car, so I pulled up next to it and killed the engine. Sarah said, "We should go inside, get warm, maybe some coffee." The diner was almost empty, with only an older man seated in a booth by the window and a waitress behind the counter. As we walked in, the waitress's expression changed, possibly due to recognition or something else. Sarah said softly, "You brought another one." Sarah nodded, and he listened this time. I looked between them, perplexed, wondering what was going on. The waitress pointed to the booth across from the old man and said, "Sit down, honey." "Coffee. I want to know what's going on. Why did you tell me there was an accident?" Sarah removed her jacket and sat down. "Because there is an accident," she said. "It happened about 10 minutes ago. 3 cars piled up right at mile marker 47. 2 people died, and 4 others were in critical condition." "How could you possibly know that?" She met my gaze. "I know your name is Michael Rhee. I know you're 28 years old, and you live on Cedar Street in Boston. I know that you would have been car number 4 if you had stayed on the highway." I had never mentioned my last name, and she couldn't see my address on my phone. "Who are you?" I said. "I'm Sarah, and I've been trying to save people from that accident for 3 months." She paused, saying, "I died in it 3 months ago today. I stood up so fast I knocked my chair over. This isn't funny." The elderly man in the other booth spoke up for the first time, saying, "Sit down, son. I know how it sounds. I had the same reaction when she picked me up 2 months prior." Sarah said calmly, "This is insane. I'm leaving. Your phone's about to ring. In about 30 seconds it's going to be a number you don't recognize. Massachusetts State Police. They're going to tell you that Route 89 is closed due to a fatal accident, and they're going to ask if you witnessed anything." I stared at her while holding my phone, and we waited in silence for 28 seconds before my phone rang. It was an unknown number with a Massachusetts area code. I answered, my hand trembling. "Hello, is this Michael Rhee?" "This is Trooper Davidson from Mass State Police. Did you drive north on Route 89 today between 3 and 4 p.m.? "Well, I did, but I took an exit." "Which exit?" "Exit 12. "All right, so the reason I'm calling is that we're looking into a serious accident at mile marker 47. We're contacting drivers who might have been in the area. Did you see anything out of the ordinary before you left?" "No, nothing. Thank you for your time. Drive carefully in this weather." He hung up and I sat down slowly, staring at Sarah. "How did you do that?" "I didn't do anything. Every Sunday at 3:47 p.m., the same location, the same weather, the same outcome, and every Sunday I stand on that shoulder and try to get people to leave before they reach it." "That's impossible." The waitress brought coffee without being asked. "You should drink this. The shock hits everyone differently." "Most people don't believe me," Sarah continued. "They think I'm crazy or dangerous." The old man leaned forward and said, "You said you died in the accident." 3 months ago, I told Sarah, I was heading to Albany, running late for my daughter's birthday. If I had stayed on that highway, I would have been in that pileup. Then she trailed off, looking out the window at the falling snow. "Then what?" I asked, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "Then I tried again, next Sunday, with someone new." She nodded. Then how are you here? I'm not sure. Every Sunday morning I wake up in my apartment as usual. Get dressed, drive north on 89, my car breaks down at mile marker 36, and I wait for someone to come get me so I can warn them. Every week, the same thing happens. That's not possible. People don't just come back. I know, but here I am. She took a sip of coffee, and here you are alive instead of in an ambulance. I took out my phone and looked up news about Route 89, and sure enough, there were several fatalities in the pileup. The highway was closed in both directions. According to the article, the accident happened at 3:47 p.m. at mile marker 47. There were 4 vehicles involved, 2 confirmed dead, and several injured. Sarah said softly, reading over my shoulder. There were only 3 cars in the accident when I died, but this time there were 4. I guess I didn't save everyone. I felt sick. I should have been in that 4th car. She shrugged and said, "What happens now? You go home. You live your life. You don't tell anyone this story because they won't believe you anyway. What about you? I'll wake up next Sunday and do it again. Until I save everyone, or until I don't know. Until whatever this is ends." I sat there for a long time, drinking coffee I couldn't taste, trying to process what had happened. Eventually, the trooper called back to say the highway was reopened, and Sarah walked me to my car. "Thank you for listening," she said. She said, "Most people don't. Thank you for warning me. Maybe take a different route next time you drive through Vermont." I drove home in a few days, and after returning to my apartment, I looked up information about Sarah. It took some time, but I eventually found her obituary. Sarah Chen, 29, died in a car accident on Route 89 on November 10th. Her parents and sister survived. That was exactly 3 months ago. Since then, I haven't driven through Vermont, adding an extra hour to any trip. This is what keeps me up at night, though. Last Sunday, I received a notification on my phone that said, Route 89, mile marker 36, 2:30 p.m. It was a calendar reminder that I can't recall setting. She requires assistance. I ignored it, erased it, and blocked it from my thoughts. This morning, I received a text from an unknown number that said, "Michael, please, there are more people. They won't listen to me, but they might listen to you. You know the truth now. You have to help me save them." I haven't replied, but every Sunday since then, I've experienced this pull. This must travel north on Route 89 to reach mile marker 36 at 2:30 p.m. in order to stand on the shoulder and alert people to the approaching danger. If I give in to that pull, I'm afraid of the consequences. I am more terrified of the consequences if I